Prosecution, call your next witness.
Yes, at this time, the state would like to call Mickey Keenan to the stand. Okay, you, Your Honor. Permission to proceed.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Officer Keenan.
Good afternoon.
Would you please state your name to the court, spelling your last name for the record?
Yeah, my name is Mickey Keenan. That's K-E-E-N-A-N.
So, Officer Keenan, could you go ahead and tell the court a little bit about yourself?
Well, I work in the Special Investigations Division of the Midland State Police Department.
And what is so special about this Special Investigations Division?
What really separates us from detectives at other departments is the sheer number of cases that we have to go undercover for.
And what kind of cases do you go undercover for?
Well, it really just depends on what kind of case is needed. I've done human trafficking, crime rings, drug rings, you name it. Sometimes the only time to keep our hometown safe is by going in from the inside, you know?
Would a detective like yourself working on this Special Investigations Unit have to go under a lot of special training to work on this unit?
Oh yeah. You have to have a lot of experience under your belt to have my position. They don't just hand any rookie a gun and an undercover ID.
And how many cases would you say that you've worked on since you've been on this unit?
Let's see. It's probably 10 or 11 by now, I'd say, if you include this Covington Bancroft incident.
Covington and Bancroft, who are they?
They were the suspects of my latest investigation. Avery Bancroft is a gambling casino owner, and Chase Covington is a state gambling commissioner.
Avery Bancroft, could you identify them? Could you identify Ms. Bancroft in the courtroom today?
Yes, she's over there with the black dress and purple coat.
Let the record reflect that my witness has properly identified Ms. Bancroft.
So shall reflect.
So, what led you to investigate Ms. Bancroft and Mr. Covington?
Well, originally I wasn't really focused on either of them, but the gambling commission itself. For years, the department has been getting tips that there was corruption going on, so I placed myself inside the commission to see if I could find anything.
But what led you to Ms. Bancroft and Ms. Covington?
Well, there was a proposal last year, a proposal for a new casino. And
I want to ask you this. What were you investigating in this department? Why were you placed on the commission staff?
Chase, since the tips have been sent out, Chase Covington, I placed myself on Chase Covington's staff to see if I could find any corruption going on in the voting process from these proposals.
And did you find any corruption in the voting process?
Yes, I did. That's when Avery Bancroft comes in.
How does Avery Bancroft then come in at this point?
Well, could you repeat the question real quick?
You said that Avery Bancroft comes in when corruption appears. How does Ms. Bancroft then come in at this point?
Oh, there were two different instances. One, Avery Bancroft called Covington, and the other was an unusual meeting between Avery Bancroft, Chase Covington, Corey Hyde, and myself.
I'd like to take these two instances one at a time, starting off with the phone call. When did that happen?
It happened on February 13th. Avery Bancroft called Chase Covington.
What was said in this phone call?
Well, Chase Covington put the phone call on speakerphone, and Avery began to say, I heard you accepting new proposals. I'm putting together one, and I'd like to talk to you to, you know, grease the wheels, as he put it.
What then happened after he said those words?
Chase's tone changed, and he became really harsh, and he immediately hung up the phone before Avery could finish talking.
After this phone call, how did you further your investigation?
That's when I recruited help from Corey Hyde, Avery Bancroft's executive assistant. He was in charge of scheduling all of Avery Bancroft's meetings, and that's how I was able to sit in on meetings between Avery Bancroft and Chase Covington.
Okay, so I'd like to go to the unusual meeting that you brought up earlier. What happened in this meeting?
Well, at the start, they were just talking about normal proposal stuff, you know, and then Chase started asking questions about money. That's when Mr. Bancroft said, of course, it's always about the money with you.
What then happened after that?
I then picked up a pen and a napkin because there was complete silence. I slid it to Avery Bancroft and repeated his own words, it's always about the money.
What did Miss Bancroft then do with that napkin?
She slid it over to Chase. Chase picked up the napkin, looked at it. He slid it back to her. Avery then immediately crossed out the $150K that was already written on the napkin and wrote, yes equals $250K.
Who wrote the 150K that was already on the napkin?
Avery did.
Okay, so what did Chase Covington then do with this napkin?
He swiftly picked it up, and put it in his pocket.
Would you recognize this napkin if I had it here in court to show to you today?
Yes, I would.
Permission to approach opposing counsel, the prosecution one.
Okay.
Officer Keenan, what is this?
This is the napkin that Avery Bancroft was writing on in the meeting.
Is that a fair and accurate copy of the napkin Avery Bancroft wrote upon in that meeting?
Affirmative.
So after Chase Covington put that napkin in his pocket, what happened after that?
Well, there was a knock at the door, and Devin Del Sesto was there. She testified earlier. Chase Covington's eyes became really wide-eyed, and Avery Bancroft told him that there was no need to be worried because the employees at the Black Bear Casino knew how to be discreet.
So when did this meeting come to an ending?
Well, after the knock at the door, Chase Covington immediately ended the meeting.
When did this meeting take place?
April 13th.
Were you supposed to have any other meetings between Chase Covington and Avery Bancroft?
I was supposed to, but Chase Covington never showed up.
And when was this meeting supposed to take place?
April 16th.
Are you aware of what this trial here today is about?
Yes, Avery Bancroft made a bribe to Chase Covington, but now she's saying that I forced her to do it.
And I want to know how you conducted your investigation, how you didn't force her to make this bribe.
I didn't force her. I provided my investigation sufficiently, like Mr. Warren had said.
And what methods did you use to operate your investigation sufficiently?
Well, I never brought up the bribe first. She was always talking about it at first. I did my job right. I did it without pressuring her. I never forced her hand.
This time I have no further questions for this witness. Thank you, Officer Keenan.
Thank you.
May I retrieve?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Detective Keenan.
Good afternoon.
I have a few questions to ask you. First off, I want to talk to you about what you're wearing on stand right now. Now, first of all, you're an undercover cop, correct?
Yes, but I like to wear the uniform.
That's fine, but I also want to ask you, when you are on undercover investigations, you don't exactly wear that uniform, do you?
No, not always.
You didn't wear it for the investigation involving Avery Bancroft, did you?
No, why would I? Didn't know I was a cop then.
All right. And it's our understanding today that you're currently on another investigation. You're working on another one.
I am, but I'm not there now.
And when you're there, you don't wear that uniform, do you?
No, why would I?
So let's talk about what you actually do on these undercover investigations.
I try to find criminals.
Well, Detective Keenan, here's the first question I'm going to ask you. For this investigation, you needed an informant, didn't you?
I did, yes.
And to get further contact with the defendant Avery Bancroft, you contacted Corey Hyde.
Yes, I did do that.
And you met with her.
I did, yes.
And when you met with her, you decided to bring up some allegations of illegal activity.
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And you used that as leverage to persuade her to join the case.
I did do that, yes.
You also you put her in charge of setting up meetings, didn't you?
She was already in charge of setting up Avery's meetings.
Is that a yes or no answer?
Yes, she's in charge of setting up Avery's meetings.
And for the very first meeting, you sent an email to her beforehand.
I did, yes.
You'd recognize a copy of that email if I brought it into court today?
Yes, ma'am, I would.
Permission to approach opposing counsel and the witness in turn with a copy of Defense Exhibit A.
Granted.
Now, Detective Keenan, as a detective, you often send emails, correct?
Yes, I do.
And when you're on these kinds of investigations, you keep them as records?
Yes, ma'am, I do,
You regularly write and keep them in your email records.
for the most part.
Is that a fair and accurate copy of what you sent?
Yes, it is.
There are no changes.
I don't believe so. There's a lot of writing here, though.
At this time, defense moves Defense Exhibit A into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
And it's admitted.
Now, Detective Keenan, I want to talk to you a bit about what you said on this email.
Yes.
Now, do you notice the line that asks Ms. Hyde to sweeten the pot at the meeting?
Yes, I do mean that, but I don't think she realized what I meant.
Well, nonetheless, you did tell her it's very important that this came from her.
Yes, I did say that because of me being a federal agent and her being my assistant. Neither of us are obligated to say what I actually said in this, and I didn't mean for her to say exactly these words.
I need a yes or no answer, Detective Keenan. You were the one who told Ms. Hyde to tell Ms. Bancroft to sweeten the pot.
I didn't tell her to say these exact words.
You wrote in that email, Detective Keenan, to have her say to Ms. Bancroft to sweeten the pot. Isn't that right?
I said to mention something about sweetening the pot, not to say sweetening the pot.
Well, Detective Keenan, in this email you also say it's very important for her to keep the conversation moving in the right direction. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
May I approach the witness and collect the document and tender it to the jury?
Yes. Thank you.
Well, now, Detective Keenan, I want to talk to you a bit about how your investigation started. Earlier on direct examination, you mentioned a phone call, right?
Yes, I did.
And that phone call was between Chase Covington and Ms. Bancroft?
Yes, ma'am.
You overheard that phone call once, right?
It only happened once.
And you never heard any prior phone calls before that between Ms. Bancroft and Mr. Covington?
Well, usually I'm not in the office when they happen.
And before this, you didn't have any more information on Ms. Bancroft, did you?
On Miss Bancroft, no, only I had heard rumors.
But no concrete evidence besides that phone call?
Not until that point, no.
So you based the start of your investigation on solely one phone call?
Well, I've started a lot of investigations with a lot less.
Well, nonetheless, Detective Keenan, I need a yes or no answer. You based the beginning of your investigation on one phone call?
Yes, I started my investigation off of that one phone call.
Now, I want to ask you one more question, and it's about the meeting on April 13th, 2015. I want to ask you a few more questions about that. So, during this meeting, you mentioned that there was a napkin involved,
Yes, ma'am, there was.
and you slid a napkin over to Ms. Bancroft.
Yes, I did.
And when she took that napkin, she used it to wipe her face.
Yes, the first time she did.
But you slipped another napkin over to her.
Yes, maybe she needed to wipe her face again.
But then she took that napkin and she proceeded to write on it.
Yes, she did write on it.
But you slipped two napkins over to her. And the first time, she used it to wipe her face.
Yes, but I didn't make her write on the napkin.
Detective Keenan, I need a yes or no answer. You slipped that napkin over to her twice.
Yes, I did.
Thank you, Detective Keenan. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Redirect?
I'll redirect, Your Honor. At this time, I just wish that my witness be excused from the stand.
You're excused. Thank you. Get up. Go back.
Your Honor, at this time, the state rests this case in chief, and we ask for a brief 5 to 10 minute recess before the defense proceeds for their case in chief.
Yeah, 5 to 10 minutes is good. Yeah.